Alright, I'm on my ebook channel here, if you will, and as you can see, I've made a range of ebooks for lots of different sort of topics. This video is all about the low carbon heating, and I've just done a video on an overview of the apprenticeship standard for centres interested in doing it. So let's just have a look through the practical training ebook that I've made. Now, I have structured and come up with a practical training manual that covers phases 1 to 3. So we'll just take you through a few of these. So it's a bit of an introduction, and these are, this is a link to a mapping document for the knowledge, skills and behaviours, and just a bit of an explanation graphic there for the KSBs. What does it actually mean, the KSB? So a useful little graphic. And basically this page is just showing you what's in it. So it's the training manual is about 200 pages with content ranging from safe working practices to low carbon heating installations, as it shows there. This ebook has embedded videos, so you can watch those as well. They also have a work diary which covers the KSBs as well. So the idea there being so we might have 1st of September there, and we might be looking at risk assessments, and it's usually giving the candidate the responsibility to actually map their own KSB, so they actually know what they're working on and what they're working through. So safe working practices starts off very simple. We've got the hazard spotting, so they're going to identify a hazard, what are the issues, and how they're going to remove or reduce it. But what I've done with this one is the hazards to be heat pump, solar thermal or ground loop related. Similar to the risk assessments, we're going to create a risk assessment now. So the candidates will be asked to put some information in regarding the risks that they've identified. There is an example for them there, so they know how to structure the risk assessments. All training tasks within the manual will have a feedback section, and it's crucial to have that feedback there so the candidate can learn, reflect and go back and carry information forward from the feedback from the trainer, the tutor. More safety information, more safety training on manual handling. So when you read through this ebook, there'll be examples and then there'll be explanations to what's going on. PPE, access equipment, firefighting, TOSH, and hazardous materials, power tools, that type of thing. And you can see again down here we've got the old feedback. And then we'll move on. So obviously on the low carbon heating standard, we're going to have a range of candidates who come to centres and training centres. So what we're looking at here is, yes, they will need to know how to fabricate a range of pipework and fittings, etc. Now, some will be more experienced than others. It doesn't matter. Everybody's going to have to work through this and demonstrate that they can meet those KSBs. So we can have a look through here. So a range of fittings identification, straightforward enough, but again, must include fittings from solar loops and ground loops, as well as generic plumbing and heating fittings. So we can't just have a load of end feed and integral solder fittings down there, compressions, type A's and B's. We want some more in there. Simple measuring and cutting tasks can be used on a range of materials as well. So it just gets candidates used to using the tools. Also embedded in this is identification of tools, which I've not put in the training part, but it goes without saying that will happen within the centre. Now you can add extra pages in there if you want for identification purposes of tools. It's entirely up to the centre. Again, as I said in my previous video, it's a live document. It's a forever in flux, and you can add things in as and when required, depending on centre. some images there of cutting steel pipe and threading and adding the hemp and paste to it. Some waste pipe training, and I've put a document H thing in there, directly to document H, so we can actually go through gradient fall. So you're going to then look at identification of wastes, fittings, and then we're going to apply that knowledge and skill into certain scenarios that a heating engineer may come across. So I've put a couple of examples there of what I will be doing for the plastic waste pipe. Safe soldering, so image there of some safe soldering going on. The identification down there is that all the tasks will be ticked off by the trainer when the candidate has achieved it. Bending of copper and low carbon steel. And once we've got that, we've got the fabrication, we've got the jointing techniques, we've got identification of fittings. So then the candidate will be looking to make something like this to demonstrate they've got those skills and they can apply them. Training will take place on installing heat emitters and dressing them, etc. And then they'll do pipe work. The pipe work on this particular drawing, half of it's in copper and half of it's in plastic, so they're doing a range of material there. Electrical work, some electrical identification of components and tools. Safe isolation. You might want to do it where they're doing safe isolation locally, or you might want to do safe isolation from the consumer unit, whatever the centre requires. It's entirely up to you, but these are just ideas, and this is what's in my practical training pack. Some wiring exercises and just simple identification of the components and the parts in a plug. Then we're going to look at the training of actually doing a wiring diagram, wiring drawing. So there's a simple S-plan there, and we're going to get the candidates to actually draw the cables in and interlinking everything. So we'll just simply draw the lines on going to each component. Then you can do another one if you require for an S-plan plus. Just insert that in. Some testing. So the candidate will be expected to write down, well, what is a short circuit test of continuity and polarity? What do you actually do? What tools do you need? And then they will carry out those tests under supervision from the trainer. Got 4 items there: air source, ground source, solar and unvented. Some electrical faults will be put onto those appliances or components, and we will actually look at identifying what fault it is and see if we can rectify it, obviously carrying out the safe isolation beforehand. Again, carrying through that knowledge and skill and applying it to further tasks. Again, we've got the feedback. A simple task here of measuring and recording dimensions and working with a level. Might seem simplistic, but it's a nice knowledge and a skill, and it will alter the actual apprentices' behaviours in how they conduct themselves and how they carry out preparing for tasks in the future. Some embedded videos here, so I'm going to use some of these videos for the electrofusion welding before the candidates undertake it in the workshop. So we've got our classroom, we've got our knowledge, and they're going to apply that knowledge to the workshop, so the knowledge and skills will come together seamlessly. So it becomes fluent and second nature to the candidates to use that knowledge and apply it in the workshop and ultimately in the workplace. So we move on to the low carbon and heating and hot water systems. Simple beginning task is building regulations, British standards, and in those two it's a simple message really. We want to look at, right, okay, what British standard is it, which approved document is it, and how does it relate to what you're doing? So it's not just a matter of putting, document A, well, it's to do with structure. Well, why? What part? What do we need? Why do we need to know that as heating engineers? What are we going to do that we need to adhere to that? For example, it might be solar thermal. We might be looking at E for soundproofing with solar thermal, that type of thing. That's what we're after. That's what we want to know. It's not just a matter of simply going down and writing structure in and hot water and sanitation, etc. Similar thing with the British standards. And then we move on to the pipe sizing. So I've given them this simple image. Down here is an example of how to get kilograms per second. So all this is within the practical training manual. Everything you see in this ebook actually appears in the practical training manual as the candidate sees it. So they're going to look at that and they're going to work out the pipe sections, and they're going to work the pipe load, 10% heat loss from the pipe, total load, convert it to flow rates, and then establish the pipe diameter from the SIBSI guide, that type of stuff there. There's an example there of that exercise that has been started, so you can see what we're after and putting in. And then move on to some heat loss calculations. Now, this is good to do in the workshop and the classroom. It's whichever way around. It doesn't matter, because they're going to get the delivery of this in both areas anyway. So these blue sort of screen captures here that appear in the practical training manual, that's how I will deliver it in the classroom as well. So they're seeing that link all the time. So there's information for them, walking the candidate through examples of how to calculate fabric heat loss through one wall, and then bring it all together for a room. So they do the study or whichever room you wanted to give them, and then they would fill this form in, and that would be in the practical training manual. This task is just simply the candidates actually drawing out a system that features low loss headers, but there's a little extra bit there. It says details for item 3 and 4. So explain why we're using a low loss header. So we've gone to an explanation in there, and identify the connections of a low loss header. So we want some information in there. Install unvented. So the screen captures show what should be being done. I just put a little image there of the composite valve combination valve, just for identification purposes, because don't forget, this is a training manual. It's not an assessment. This is training. So people will make mistakes, but you've got to allow people to make those mistakes, but also give them every opportunity to research and find out the information they require to minimise those mistakes. So benchmark certificate and S-plan wiring, because if I take you back, you can see here that we want it all wiring up and all functioning when the actual installation is complete. Simple task of setting temperatures on a blending valve, and you can see again I've given them some information. So the trainer will give them a set temperature, and they're going to have to set that temperature depending on what's agreed with the trainer and the candidate. Install of a primary filter on a heating system, straightforward enough. Again, subject to what centres have got, but the idea of this is that I'm going to have candidates draining a heating system down and installing this, putting it in, flushing it out, adding the inhibitor to the correct levels, and then testing the system, etc. That's the idea with that. Installing the underfloor manifold. So this is an example of that, right, we're extending a heating system. We're going to put this in, and we're going to commission it according to manufacturer's instructions and bring it into operation, set the flow rates accordingly, etc. And you can see here there's another image of what the tasks are. But down the right hand side, I've just put this in here because I do have a sort of an assessor training guide that goes along with the training pack. And it just gives the trainer guidance on what is meant to be expected of the candidate. So we're not trying to second guess things. Then we move on to air source heat pumps, and we're going to do some design. So we're just simply working through some documents that will be required for the candidate, and they're going to answer some questions first before they do any design. They're going to actually look at a DNO scenario task. So there's a link there to MCS, and also there's a QR code there. And that QR code will take them to Google Maps, and it'll show them a property of where they're going to install, so they can put all the information in that's required for the DNO task. And I'll work through here. I've given them some information. There's lots of information. There's a drawing there, design data there. They're going to check whether everything's okay. They're going to work the way down the pre-installation checklist, using the information that's available to them. Again, just before they start doing the materials list, there's a QR code there that takes them to a quiz. Just checking, and you can monitor where people are up to. So it's very, very useful doing these types of knowledge checks within the workshop environment as well as in the classroom. And you can see here we've got materials list for the air source heat pump for the install. Each candidate, after the installation of the heat pump, will commission to complete the commissioning sheet. So there's a commissioning sheet there, and then the compliance certificate, quite lengthy. And we move on to service and maintenance record, and obviously this is air source heat pumps. Fault finding, and then we move into solar, and again design. So it does repeat itself across the three technologies to some extent now. And you can see we've gone from some design, some pre-design questions, install of the components, commissioning, another check on knowledge, handover, so a compliance sheet for solar thermal, service and maintain solar thermal, fault finding, so we had set some faults and write down the symptom and what action they've taken. But to assist them again in this, I've just put 2 in there, but there's about 10 to 15 actual screenshots within the training manual that help the candidate with common issues on the solar thermal. So that type of thing is in. It's in for the air source heat pumps, it's in for the solar, it's in for the ground source heat pumps. So again, can't stress this enough, it's a training manual. It isn't an assessment. You train the candidates to make them fluent and to act in a certain way so it becomes second nature to them. Again, ground source heat pumps, we're going to go through the design. There are some bits and pieces in here though, I just want to go back. So working with an employer, and they thought that what was key was this sort of site investigation. So to that end, we made some sort of scenario questions to ask the candidates how they would act in a given scenario. So there's a range of those within the training packs. It goes on, so we've got vertical bore holes, we've got horizontal ground loops, and then information of how many kilowatts we need. So you can see there's a lot of information in the training manuals, so the candidate can use that information, gain some knowledge and apply that knowledge to develop their skills. And again, you can see we've got compliance stuff, commissioning certificate, and then we'll move on to fault finding. And you can see that's the general idea of how the actual training will take place. Now, I've not shown you absolutely everything in that ebook walkthrough there, because obviously there's 200 pages within the training pack, but you get the general idea of what the candidate is meant to be able to do when they come to Gateway. So if you follow that type of training pack, whether you develop your own or you use somebody else's, that's the type of information that the candidate should be carrying. They've got the keys, the KSBs, they've got the knowledge, they've got the skills, they know about the behaviours, how it impacts them, the client and their employer. So I will do another video on the actual recording of the KSBs and how the candidate will actually complete what I see as an acceptable submission for the practical work experience, their work log, the evidence that they're going to supply from on-site pre-Gateway. So I'll see you in video 3. Thank you.